What if the most universally debated concept in human history, uh, the very concept of God, is actually the result of a colossal, millennia-old case of mistaken identity?
I mean, think about that for just a second. We argue, we fight, we wage massive wars over this.
Right. We build entire civilizations and draft our moral codes around this one singular concept.
Exactly. But what if the absolute bedrock of all of that, well, isn't what we think it is?
Yeah, what if the origin of that word and, the entities that actually claimed it are entirely distinct from the real architecture of the universe?
It's a massive question.
It really is. So, welcome to Creation Conversations. Today, we are embarking on an exploration that is, frankly, going to challenge some of the most deeply held assumptions of human history.
It is a profound, paradigm-shifting topic. And to explore it properly, we have a very specific mission today.
Right. We are looking at some very specific source material.
Yes. We are going to examine an incredibly controversial and intricate narrative found within a set of alternative historical texts, specifically the Talmud Jmmanuel, alongside some really detailed documents from the Billy Meier Contact Reports.
Specifically, reports 039 and 536.
Right, exactly. We are going to dissect the stark, uncompromising distinction these texts draw between the true nature of what they call creation, the literal origins of the word God, and, well, a group of ancient extraterrestrial rulers.
Rulers known by the titles JH and JHWH. But look, before we get into the weeds here, I really want to be clear with everyone listening.
Yes, the disclaimer is crucial.
Totally. We are looking at some incredibly provocative alternative texts today. These documents make massive claims that run completely counter to established mainstream religious dogma.
And orthodox historical timelines, for that matter.
Right. So we aren't here to endorse these views, and we certainly aren't here to attack anyone's faith or ridicule religious believers in any way.
No, not at all. Our job today is purely analytical.
Exactly. We are just going to put this wild, fascinating source material on the table, open it up, and see exactly what it claims.
We want to map out the architecture of this narrative so that you, the listener, can investigate it for yourself.
Yeah, you need to reason independently and draw your own conclusions. We are just playing the role of impartial guides through a very complex textual landscape.
Which is really the only intellectually honest way to approach material of this magnitude.
For sure. So where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, if we are going to understand this narrative, we have to start at the absolute foundation. The texts we are examining propose a very specific cosmology.
Right, setting the baseline.
Exactly. Before we can even begin to talk about ancient extraterrestrials, mythical deities, or altered human biology, we first have to define what these source texts say the ultimate reality actually is.
Yeah, because if you go into this thinking of the traditional Western concept of a creator, like a guy with a white beard sitting on a throne in the clouds, managing human affairs, you are going to completely miss what these sources are saying.
We'll miss the entire point. According to these texts, creation is fundamentally impersonal.
Impersonal, so no human personality at all.
None. It has no ego. It doesn't experience petty human emotions like jealousy or anger.
It doesn't play favorites with certain tribes or nations either.
Exactly. And it absolutely is not a sovereign ruler demanding that you fall on your knees and worship it.
That is such a departure from what most of us are taught.
It is. The sources are highly specific about stripping away all anthropomorphic traits. When humans try to conceptualize the infinite, we naturally project our own human characteristics onto it.
Right, we imagine as superhuman.
Yes, and these texts aggressively reject that idea. They describe creation instead as a universal, evolving, creative consciousness and energy.
It's a boundless force.
A boundless force, exactly. But crucially, it is not some chaotic magic system. It is governed entirely by immutable, unbreakable natural laws.
So it's the energetic engine of all life, all matter, and all spirit.
Yes, constantly expanding and evolving through pure logic and cause and effect.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm grasping the scale of this, and I want to make sure you, the listener, are with us too. Because the texts introduce a distinction here that really threw me at first.
You mean the distinction between creation and existence?
Yes. They say creation is not the same thing as existence.
Yeah.
How do those two concepts differ in this cosmology? Because in everyday language, we use those words interchangeably.
It is a highly nuanced concept, for sure, but it's central to their cosmology. In these texts, existence is the overarching absolute reality.
Like the biggest possible picture.
Right. It is the infinite, incomprehensible canvas. Creation, on the other hand, is the specific, localized universe or consciousness energy that exists within that greater existence.
Oh, wow. So creation is inside existence.
Yeah. Yes. Creation is boundless to our human perception, but it is still technically a component of the ultimate absolute, which they call existence.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if this tracks. If we think about a massive, infinite supercomputer, existence is the hardware.
I like where this is going.
Yeah, so existence is the physical and non-physical architecture. The silicon, the circuitry, the infinite space where processes can happen. Creation, then, is the ultimate operating system running on that hardware.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a self-evolving code governed by strict mathematical laws.
Mm.
But the crucial part of this analogy is that the operating system isn't a programmer with human emotions sitting at a keyboard typing out commands.
Exactly. The operating system doesn't get angry if a program crashes.
Right, and it doesn't need the programs to sing songs about how great the operating system is. It just runs.
Yeah.
It's the system itself evolving within the greater hardware of existence.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it.
Yeah.
The operating system does not demand worship. It demands adherence to its coding parameters.
Because if you write bad code, the program fails.
That is cause and effect. That is natural law. In the context of these sources, adhering to the laws of creation means aligning oneself with truth, logic, love, and evolutionary progress.
So worship, in the traditional religious sense of blind submission, is completely useless to this system.
Entirely useless to an impersonal energetic system.
But, I mean, that creates a massive psychological vacuum, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, the ultimate reality is this neutral, impersonal operating system. Primitive humanity isn't going to find much comfort in that.
Oh, absolutely not.
When an early human is freezing, starving, or, watching a thunderstorm tear through their village, they don't want an impersonal operating system. They want a programmer they can beg for help.
They want a parent figure.
Exactly. They want a tangible authority to save them.
And you've just identified the exact vulnerability in the human psyche that these texts claim was exploited.
Wow, really?
Yes. Primitive humanity, lacking the scientific or spiritual maturity to comprehend an impersonal creation, inherently sought out powerful figures to project their awe and fear onto.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. According to the Contact Reports, right when humanity was in this vulnerable, primitive state, someone, or rather a group of someones, showed up to fill that vacuum.
Which brings us to the Jesus.
Yes, the Jesuits.
Let's spell that out for the listener, because it's a very specific, unique term in the Billy Meier material. It's spelled Jschwjsch. Pronounced approximately Ishwish, right?
Correct, Ishwish. And the literal translation provided in the text is King of Wisdom.
King of Wisdom, okay.
Now, we must emphasize heavily what the texts explicitly state here, because this is where the great confusion really begins.
This is the turning point.
And Ishwish is not a divine being. They are not supernatural ethereal spirits, nor are they the creators of the universe.
But what are they?
According to this narrative, an Ishwish was simply a highly developed, technologically and spiritually advanced extraterrestrial human being.
Wait, human beings. So they were flesh and blood. They were mortal.
Entirely mortal. They bled, they needed sustenance, they reproduced, and they eventually died.
Wow. So they weren't immortal gods at all.
No. Their lifespans were vastly longer than what we experience on Earth today, and their mastery over science, energy, and matter was exponentially greater, but they were still bound by the same physical universe.
Going back to the analogy, they were part of the operating system, not the authors of it.
Precisely.
Okay, let's put ourselves in the shoes of an early Earth human. Let's say we're a primitive agrarian society. We barely understand the changing of the seasons.
We probably think disease is caused by bad air or evil spirits.
Right. And suddenly the sky opens up. Metallic ships descend, completely defying gravity. Beings step out who look somewhat like us, but they have technologies that appear to be pure magic.
It would be mind-blowing.
They can cure diseases instantly. They have weapons that can vaporize a mountain. They communicate across vast distances, and they live for hundreds or thousands of years. How on earth is a primitive human mind supposed to process that?
It processes it through the only lens available to it, which is mysticism and divinity.
Ah, of course.
Anthropologists actually call this phenomenon a cargo cult.
Oh, like what happened in the Pacific?
Exactly. We saw this happen in recorded history during World War II when technologically advanced American and Japanese militaries landed on remote Pacific islands.
Right. The indigenous populations had never seen airplanes or manufactured goods before,
Right, and they interpreted these arrivals as divine events. When the militaries left, the islanders built mock airplanes out of wood and vines.
hoping the gods would return and bring more cargo, right?
Yes, they held rituals imitating the soldiers' marching drills, praying to summon these technological gods back.
So the texts are suggesting that all of early human history is basically a planetary scale cargo cult.
In a way, yes. We saw beings with superiority in knowledge, spirit, and technology. And because we couldn't understand the science, we equated it with divine immortality.
We thought they were the ultimate creation.
Exactly. The primitive Earthlings completely misunderstood what they were looking at. However, we really need to introduce a crucial caveat here to accurately represent the source material.
Let's hear it.
The texts do not imply that all highly developed extraterrestrial humans demanded worship.
Okay, that's important. So they weren't all power-hungry megalomaniacs.
Not at all. The texts mention that many advanced beings, including those referred to as the Plejaren, acted as careful observers or indirect guides.
They understood the prime directive, so to speak.
Right. They understood the danger of interfering with the natural evolution of primitive societies.
Look.
For many of these advanced cultures, the title Ishwish, King of Wisdom, was just a societal designation of immense respect for a wise, learned leader or teacher.
Kind of like how we might use the title professor or doctor or president.
Exactly. It denoted high achievement and responsibility, not divinity.
But, I mean, power is a corrupting force, whether you were born on Earth or in another star system.
It certainly is.
If you land on a planet and the entire global population immediately falls on their faces and treats you like the ultimate creator of the universe, it takes a massive amount of ethical restraint to say, no, please get up, I'm just a guy with a spaceship.
And some of these beings, according to the texts, lacked that restraint entirely.
They took advantage of it.
They did. They realized that demanding worship was a highly effective, albeit deeply unethical way to maintain absolute control over a planetary population.
They leaned into the misunderstanding.
Heavily. And to truly grasp how this title of respect and this technological confusion devolve into the deeply entrenched religious dogma we know today, we have to look at the linguistic origins of the deception.
Oh, this is fascinating.
We need to trace the actual etymology of the word we now translate as God. And the claims made in Contact Report 536 regarding this are truly startling.
Wait, hang on. You're telling me that the foundation of major world religions is literally just misunderstood alien folklore?
That is essentially what the text is claiming, yes.
But how do you even draw a historical line from a campfire story in another star system to an actual holy war on Earth? Because that is a massive, massive leap.
It is a massive leap.
I mean, when we say the word God today, we think of the universal absolute. But Contact Report 536 claims this word has a literal physical origin as an imaginary character.
Yes. It is perhaps one of the most provocative and difficult claims in the material to wrap one's head around. The report details that the concept and the root of the term we eventually translated as God originated within ancient Laren traditions as a fictional fairy tale character.
A fairy tale,
Yeah.
like Cinderella or Paul Bunyan.
Precisely. In these ancient extraterrestrial fables, God was depicted as a supreme, superplanetary, omnipotent, and omniscient creational figure.
Okay, so a character in a story.
Right. He was a character in stories used to impart moral lessons or explain the unexplainable, much like modern human myths. But it was entirely understood by the people telling those original stories that this figure was a myth.
It was just a storytelling device for them.
Exactly.
So for these ancient extraterrestrial cultures, God was basically just a character in their version of Aesop's fables.
Yes.
But the history of this fairy tale goes back incredibly far. Contact Report 536 traces this linguistic artifact even further back than the Lyrans.
It does. The report acts as a sort of cosmic etymological dictionary. It states that this fairy tale concept was originally brought to the Laren areas by refugees from the Sirius system.
Oh, wow. So it migrated across star systems.
Yes, and specifically, it attributes the origin of the myth to a group known as the Peoples of Kudra.
The Kudra.
Right, who originally hailed from the Nisan system, which the text locates far beyond the galactic central sun.
Okay, let's map this out so we don't lose the listener.
Good idea.
We have a mythological tradition, a literal fairy tale, about an all-powerful being that starts in the Nicene system with the Kudra people.
Correct.
They carry this story to the Sirius system, and eventually refugees bring this myth to the Lyrans.
Yes.
And over millennia, this story is passed down, much like human myths evolve. So how does this fictional character become a terrifying, real-world authority figure on Earth?
This is the exact pivot point of the Great Misunderstanding.
How so?
The transition from myth to brutal physical reality occurred when actual mortal leaders, those advanced extraterrestrial humans who lacked ethical restraint, began deliberately adopting the persona of this mythical god to rule over primitive populations.
It's the ultimate stolen valor.
It really is.
They took a concept they knew was entirely fictional from their own cultural history, they stepped off their spaceships on Earth, and they presented this myth to primitive Earthlings as reality.
Exactly.
And then they pointed at themselves and said, by the way, I am that being.
It was a calculated psychological usurpation. They weaponized their own mythology. And that brings us to Contact Report 039 and the rise of a very specific historical ruler known as JHWH.
Also known as Jehovah.
Yes.
We need to be very careful with our terms here because this is where the texts draw a hard line that is going to sound incredibly controversial to anyone raised in a Western religious tradition.
Absolutely.
We previously discussed the general title, Jaish, the King of Wisdom, a title of respect, but the text distinguished that general title from a specific personal name or adopted title, JHWH.
Yes. Contact Report 039 details the reign of a specific JHWH who ruled roughly 2,150 years ago.
And the sources emphasize that this being completely abandoned the ethical responsibilities expected of a highly advanced human, right?
Completely. He is not described as a loving creator in any way.
No, they don't mince words at all.
No.
The texts refer to him as the unjust and cruel one.
He is described as a malicious, power-hungry life form. To maintain absolute, terrifying control over the Earth human population, he falsely proclaimed himself to be the ultimate creation.
He demanded absolute submission.
Absolute submission and obedience, using advanced technology to enforce his will and simulate divine wrath.
Let's talk about the logistics of that terror for a second. If you are an advanced being trying to rule a primitive planet, you don't just ask nicely.
No, you use force.
The texts say he heedlessly demanded innocent human blood and drove millions to death and destruction.
It was brutal subjugation.
When you read ancient religious accounts of a deity demanding the slaughter of entire cities, ordering the eradication of rival tribes, or, demanding animal or human blood sacrifices.
Acting with jealous, vindictive rage.
Yes. According to these sources, you aren't reading about the ultimate impersonal operating system of the universe having a bad day.
No, you are reading the historical record of a mortal extraterrestrial dictator named JHWH using advanced weaponry and psychological warfare to enforce his reign.
So the wrath of God was, in reality, the deployment of extraterrestrial military force against defenseless primitive populations who disobeyed their colonial governor.
That is exactly what the texts claim.
The psychological impact of this on human evolution is staggering to think about.
It's cemented a trauma-based obedience into the human psyche.
Yeah, this deliberate deception created what we can call the Great Misunderstanding. Humanity completely, utterly lost the ability to distinguish between the immutable, impersonal laws of creation and the dictatorial, egomaniacal commands of an advanced extraterrestrial human.
The two concepts were forcefully fused together in the collective human consciousness. This is why, for millennia, humans have believed that the creator of the universe cares whether they eat certain foods or wear certain fabrics.
Or conquer a specific piece of land in the Middle East.
Exactly. They attributed the micromanaging, neurotic, and often violent dictates of a mortal ruler to the boundless energy of creation.
So when a lightning bolt struck a tree, early humans didn't think, electrostatic discharge, a natural law of creation.
No, they thought JHWH is angry because we didn't sacrifice enough goats this week.
The operating system was completely replaced in our minds by a furious, unpredictable programmer.
And this deep-rooted deception was so absolute, so thoroughly ingrained in human culture and institutions, that when later historical figures attempted to teach the truth, their words were actively hijacked.
Which leads us directly into the Talmud Jmmanuel, arguably the most important source text for understanding the rebellion against this deception.
It is a critical piece of the puzzle.
Let's set the stage for the Talmud Jmmanuel. This text purports to be the original, unedited, translated source document of the teachings of a man named Jmmanuel.
The historical figure who would later be known to the world through various translations and edits as Jesus.
Right. Now, if you read this specific text, its primary focus, almost its singular mission, isn't about founding a new religion.
No, not at all.
It is about stripping away this God myth to reveal the truth of the impersonal creation.
The Talmud Jmmanuel is a fascinating document to analyze precisely because it reads as a direct, active rebellion against the JShish and JHWH rulers.
It's a manual for spiritual independence.
Exactly. It is a concerted effort by an advanced spiritual teacher to untangle the great misunderstanding. It actively contrasts the true natural laws of creation with the false demands of these extraterrestrial imposters.
Let's look at some specific chapters to see exactly how it draws this distinction, because the mechanics of it are quite revealing.
Chapter 3 is a phenomenal place to start.
Okay, let's go there.
It covers a very famous event, the baptism of Jmmanuel by John. Now, in the traditional mainstream religious narrative, a voice booms down from the sky saying, "This is my beloved son."
A classic miracle story.
But the Talmud Jmmanuel in verses 3.5 and 3.6 completely flips the script on what was actually happening there.
What does it say?
It explicitly states that this voice was not creation. It says the voice was a deception by a celestial son named Gabriel, who tricked the people because they were ignorant of true creation.
Wow. We need to analyze the mechanics of this deception, as described in the text.
Yes, let's break it down.
The text is pointing out that advanced beings, these celestial sons, were still actively intervening on Earth, playing the role of the divine to manipulate the population.
Gabriel, in the context of this source material, is not an ethereal, winged angel made of light.
He is a physical, extraterrestrial human being.
Exactly.
So when the text says a voice came from the sky, we shouldn't be picturing a magical booming cloud. We should be picturing an advanced aerial craft using some kind of highly advanced acoustic projection.
Like a massive loudspeaker technology.
Right. Imagine the psychological effect of a directional acoustic weapon or advanced public address system being deployed over a crowd of first-century people.
It would be absolutely terrifying.
They would perceive it as an absolute miracle, the literal voice of God.
That Talmud Jmmanuel is systematically exposing these theatrical displays of power. It is arguing that these entities use technology to maintain the illusion of divinity.
And Jmmanuel's entire teaching mission was aimed at breaking that illusion.
And we see him fight that illusion directly in chapter 4 during the temptation in the wilderness.
Oh, this is a great part. Instead of being tempted by a supernatural devil, Jmmanuel confronts a high leader, a God figure, who demands his submission and worship.
And Jmmanuel's response in verse 4.26 is incredibly powerful.
He doesn't cower, does he?
No, he doesn't submit. He says, "Be gone, you impostor, because it is written, you shall worship creation alone and adhere to its laws."
That verse serves as a definitive thesis for Jmmanuel's philosophy within this text.
It really does.
He is looking directly at an advanced, powerful, extraterrestrial human, an imposter god who likely had immense technological capabilities, and he's outright rejecting his authority.
He draws an uncompromising line. You do not worship powerful humans no matter what ships they fly or what weapons they wield.
Or what fairy tales they claim to embody. You only adhere to the immutable laws of the universal creation.
He takes this message straight to the masses in chapter 5 during what we know as the Sermon on the Mount.
Right. Verses 5.21 through 5.23 contain a very clear, explicit directive.
He tells the crowds to pray to the omnipotence of creation, and he specifically warns them not to pray to false, powerless gods who are merely human beings of a higher spiritual state.
Note the precise phrasing there. Human beings of a higher spiritual state.
Yes, that's key. He doesn't deny their existence.
And he acknowledges their advancement. He doesn't dispute that these beings are powerful, evolved, or capable of incredible feats.
His core argument is that evolution, technology, and power do not equate to divinity.
Right. A being can be a million years ahead of us in evolution, but they are still a product of the universe.
They're still part of the system, not the creator of the system itself. Therefore, offering them religious worship is fundamentally useless and misguided.
The absolute mic drop of the Talmud Jmmanuel, the moment that brings this entire narrative into sharp focus, happens in chapter 23.
Verses 23.12 through 14.
Yes, these act as the thesis statement for this entire exploration we're doing today. The text says, "There is only one creation and no gods beside it." Those who set themselves up as gods were human beings who came from the stars and elevated themselves above the earth humans.
It is a profound demystification of human history.
It really is. The text is attempting to shatter the mythological, religious lens through which humanity has viewed its past for thousands of years.
It replaces that mystical lens with a historical, albeit extraterrestrial, reality.
The goal of this text is to liberate the human mind from its self-imposed subservience to mortal rulers who have masqueraded as the divine.
Exactly.
I want to try another analogy here because the tragedy of what happened to this text is profound. It's like a hostile corporate takeover.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Imagine Jmmanuel is a revolutionary founder who writes a brilliant manifesto designed specifically to free the workers from a tyrannical board of directors, these extraterrestrial despots.
Okay, I'm following.
He hands out the manifesto, and it's powerful. It points the workers toward freedom and natural laws. But then, the tyrannical board of directors stages a hostile takeover.
They seize the company.
They seize the company, and they seize the manifesto.
Hmm.
Over centuries, they subtly edit the text. They change a word here, mistranslate a phrase there.
And eventually, they invert the message completely.
Yes. The Revolutionary Manifesto, designed to overthrow the false gods, is slowly re-edited into an employee compliance manual that instructs the workers to worship those exact same despots.
That is a highly accurate representation of the claims made in these sources regarding the historical evolution of religious texts.
It's the ultimate tragic irony.
It is. The original message of spiritual independence and adherence to natural law was systematically distorted to reinforce the exact subservience it was meant to destroy.
The implications for human culture, psychology, and spiritual development are vast. I mean, we have spent thousands of years warring over edited manuals.
But the sources we are analyzing today make an even more radical claim.
Oh, right. We're getting into the biology.
Yes. They assert that the consequences of this cosmic deception weren't just spiritual, they weren't just cultural or political.
According to Contact Report 039, the consequences of this subjugation were fundamentally physically biological.
This is where we cross a major threshold in this narrative, moving from ancient history and theology directly into the realm of genetics and physical anthropology.
The sources claim that humanity's biological blueprint has been deliberately and physically altered, right?
Yes. Let's dive into the biological claims made in Contact Report 039 regarding the dramatic fall of the human lifespan.
Okay, lay it out for us. What was our baseline supposed to be?
The report states that the original Earth human, guided and developed by indirect ancient ancestors over vast stretches of time, possessed an astonishing average lifespan.
How long are we talking?
The text specifically cites a natural human lifespan of approximately 1,007 years.
1,000 years.
Yeah.
Now, when you read about figures like Methuselah in ancient texts living for 900 years, we are conditioned to view that as purely metaphorical, right? A myth used to denote wisdom.
But the Contact Report is claiming that wasn't a myth at all. It was our actual historical baseline biology.
But obviously, look around. We don't live to be 1,000 years old today. We are lucky if we hit 80. What does the text say happened?
Well, with a 1,000-year lifespan comes a correspondingly enormous level of knowledge. Individuals had centuries to learn, develop, experiment, and perfect their understanding of the universe.
A society comprised of 1,000-year-old adults would possess unimaginable wisdom and stability.
Absolutely, but according to the source text, this lifespan plummeted to roughly 50 years, historically speaking.
A mere 20th of its original length.
And crucially, they claim this was not a natural evolutionary decay.
So it wasn't just a change in diet or a harsh ice age or something environmental.
No. The sources point to deliberate genetic manipulation by extraterrestrial agents. They state that human genes were forcibly altered to drastically shorten the biological lifespan.
But why? What is the motive for doing that?
The motive provided is chillingly logical from a dictator's perspective. By reducing the lifespan to a few decades, humanity is kept in a constant state of rapid generational turnover.
You prevent the accumulation of deep, multi-century wisdom.
Exactly. You keep the population perpetually young, ignorant, and therefore vastly easier to control.
They intentionally sped up our biological clock. It's the ultimate method of suppression.
It really is.
If you only live for 50 years, you spend your first 20 years just trying to understand the world, your next 20 years working yourself to the bone to survive and raise kids, and then you die before you ever have the time or wisdom to question the fundamental reality of the gods ruling over you.
Precisely. And the text notes that this physical genetic tampering was further compounded by humanity falling into erroneous religious teachings.
How does that connect?
By worshiping false gods and living in ways that were contrary to the natural laws of creation, humanity induced a psychosomatic degradation that further weakened our biology over successive generations.
Okay, this is where we really need to pump the brakes and bring in a critical scientific reality check.
Yes, we need to draw a clear line here.
Because we aren't just taking this narrative at face value, we are analyzing it. And when a text makes specific claims about human DNA and genetics, we have to look at what mainstream modern science actually observes under a microscope today.
We have to ask, does our DNA show evidence of something strange?
Exactly. To provide proper context for the listener, we must look at the biological markers. When we look at modern human genetics, mainstream science does identify a major, undeniable biological anomaly in our DNA that sets us apart from other primates.
You're referring to human chromosome 2.
Yes, chromosome 2. Break that down for us. What exactly are we looking at?
Humans have 46 chromosomes in our cells, arranged in 23 pairs. All other great apes, like chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, they have 48 chromosomes, or 24 pairs.
So we are missing a pair.
For a long time, this was a massive puzzle in evolutionary biology. If we share a common ancestor, where did the extra pair of chromosomes go?
And the answer lies in human chromosome 2.
Yes, under a microscope, science clearly shows that two distinct ancestral ape chromosomes fused end-to-end to create the single, large human chromosome 2.
We can actually see the fusion.
Yes, we can see the remnants of the extra telomeres and a second inactive centromere right in the middle of it. It is undeniable evidence of a chromosomal fusion event.
Okay, so a massive fusion event happened in our genetic past that fundamentally altered our species.
That is a scientific fact.
And what about the aging aspect? The texts claim our lifespans were deliberately shortened. Does science have a mechanism for how our biological clock works?
Yes, and mainstream science deeply understands the mechanisms of cellular aging. This brings us back to the structures called telomeres.
Don't tell us about telomeres.
Telomeres are vital structures, essentially protective caps made of repeating DNA sequences located at the ends of our chromosomes. Think of them like the plastic tips at the ends of your shoelaces that keep them from fraying.
Oh, I remember learning about this. Every time a cell divides to replicate, those telomeres get slightly shorter, right?
Exactly. The replication machinery can't copy the very end of the DNA strand. So with every cell division throughout your life, your telomeres degrade and shorten.
And what happens when they get too short?
When they become too short, the cell enters a state called senescence. It can no longer divide, it stops functioning properly, and eventually it dies.
So this degradation of telomeres is one of the primary drivers of cellular aging and our biological lifespan limitations.
Yes, it is a built-in biological countdown clock.
Okay, let's draw a very firm, explicit boundary here so we do not confuse the listener. What does mainstream science say about why this fusion happened and why our telomeres shorten versus what these alternative contact reports claim?
The boundary is extremely clear, and it is vital to respect it.
Go ahead.
Mainstream science universally recognizes these biological observations, the fusion of chromosome 2 and the degradation of telomeres, as natural, unguided evolutionary events.
So science says it's just natural evolution.
Yes. The fusion of chromosome 2 is considered a natural mutation that either provided some evolutionary advantage or simply drifted into the population over hundreds of thousands of years.
And the telomeres.
The telomere shortening is viewed as a biological reality of our evolutionary lineage. Mainstream science does not identify an extraterrestrial agent, nor does it see any evidence of ancient, deliberate genetic tampering in a laboratory.
So to summarize the clash, the alternative sources are taking a known, observable biological fact, the mysterious fusion of chromosome 2 and the built-in aging mechanism of our telomeres, and they are reframing it entirely.
Entirely.
Instead of accepting it as random, unguided natural evolution, they claim this was an artificial intervention. They claim our biological clock was maliciously sped up by the J shrews to keep us controllable.
Precisely. The contact reports use these existing biological realities but provide their own highly controversial alternative explanation.
Right.
They claim that the limits on our biology are the direct result of deliberate intervention by these ancient, powerful human beings to limit our consciousness and lifespan.
So while the biological structures, the chromosomes and telomeres, are factual and undisputed by science, the cause, the extraterrestrial genetic engineering, is a claim completely unique to these source texts.
Yes, and entirely unrecognized by modern genetics.
It's an incredibly fascinating narrative integration, though.
How do you mean?
Well, the texts point to our actual physical DNA and essentially say, See that fusion in chromosome 2. See that built-in aging mechanism degrading your cells right now. That is the physical fingerprint of the just shush.
That is the biological scar of your ancient subjugation.
Exactly. It takes the abstract theological concept of a false god
Yeah.
and grounds it in the physical reality of our own bodies.
It creates a comprehensive, inescapable worldview. According to the architecture of these texts, the Great Misunderstanding wasn't merely a mental or spiritual prison constructed out of dogma and fairy tales.
It was accompanied by a literal physical prison of a shortened lifespan, biologically designed to prevent humanity from ever having the time or wisdom to figure out the deception.
Which brings us back to the sheer, staggering scale of the journey we've taken today.
It has been a wild ride. We set out to map a very specific alternative narrative, and the terrain we covered challenges almost every foundational assumption of human history.
We started by looking at how these sources define the ultimate reality, an impersonal, universal creation.
An energetic operating system governed by strict natural laws, entirely distinct from the overarching hardware of existence.
And completely devoid of human ego or the desire for worship.
We then explored the etymology of an illusion. We trace the word God back to a literal Laren fairy tale, a story originally brought from the Kudra people of the distant Nosson system.
A myth that was entirely fictional in its origin.
A myth that was then weaponized and stolen by mortal, technologically advanced extraterrestrial rulers, the J-Sheesh, and specifically the cruel, bloodthirsty dictator JHWH.
We saw how they disguised themselves as this mythical deity, using superior technology to demand blood, sacrifice, and absolute obedience.
Thereby creating the great misunderstanding that still echoes through our global religions today.
We examined how the Talmud Jmmanuel attempted to unedit this tragic history. We analyzed verses that portray Jmmanuel not as a divine savior, but as a revolutionary teacher.
A teacher who actively rejected these imposter gods, exposed their technological deceptions, and tried to point humanity back to the true impersonal laws of creation.
And finally, we looked at the deeply controversial claim that this cosmic deception was written into our very biology.
The assertion that our shortened lifespans and the distinct anomalies in our DNA, such as chromosome 2 and our degrading telomeres, are the physical legacy of this ancient extraterrestrial intervention.
Even as modern science views those exact same markers as the results of unguided natural evolution.
It is a vast paradigm-shifting narrative. Whether one views it as historical truth, profound allegory, or elaborate science fiction, it undeniably forces us to question the foundations of our mythology.
The nature of authority and the origins of our physical and spiritual limitations.
It really does. It forces you to look at history, religion, and even your own reflection in the mirror differently. And it leaves us with the exact question we promised to ask at the very beginning of this conversation.
A question that sits perfectly at the intersection of history, theology, and human potential.
Did humanity mistake mortal rulers and inherited mythology for creation itself? And what would changing that understanding mean for human consciousness, responsibility, and future evolution? Thank you for joining this in-depth exploration. We encourage you to question everything you've heard today, to read the original sources for yourself, and to always think independently. Until next time, this has been Creation Conversations.